Good morning. My name is Kristen Thorne, and I'm the Provider Resource Specialist, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's provider meeting. We have one announcement before we get started, so I'm going to have Kyle Miller share some information with all of you.
Hi, everybody. Hey, a couple things besides the announcement. I just like to push us time-wise, so just bear with me. I want to say we're really excited that Carissa and Ann are both here because we, if you don't know, we're redoing our communications department, and they will be the key figures of that. They've got another person, I don't think Alicia is on, but we're pretty excited about where that's going to take us. So I'm glad that you guys are moving into a new, so we're glad they're here today, and I'm looking forward to the things they're going to do forward. Going forward, I saw a couple former Fairfield DD employees jumping on here. Just want to have a shout out to Lisa Chandler and Sarah Fries. They were both here for a second, so just wanted to make sure you guys knew that we had a couple former employees here. We're glad you're here. And then the last thing is the reason that Kristen wanted me to talk. I think they're always afraid of when they let me take my mute off, but where it's going to go. But this is a good thing. So one of the things that we've been talking about internally is how can we, as we've talked about this before, how can we support the providers with offloading some of your expenses? So one of the things that we've been able to do, we haven't taken it to the board yet, but we're going to be taking it to the board in March about paying reimbursing agency providers up to $15 an hour for their DSPs that do training with us. So if you send a DSP to do training with Pam or any one of our staff, then we will reimburse the agency up to $15 for that training. Now, there will be a contract involved, and the reason it's got to go to the board is we're going to take one general contract to the board in March, and hopefully the board will allow John to sign those contracts going forward, because that way we won't have to go each one to the board. So we're going to get a template taken to the board in March, and then it should be available after March. So if that's something you're interested in doing, reach out to any one of us, the provider group, and we will get you a copy of that contract so you can sign it, and then we can get John to sign it. And then it's starting in April, I think we will be able to reimburse your agency for those annual trainings that we're going to be provided by Pam. And of course, I'm going to let her and you work out, the contacts and all that great stuff. And I know she's really excited about keeping the record keeping piece of it. But again, it's something new to all of us. But so bear with us if we work out some kinks and some things that may not work out perfectly smooth, but we're pretty excited about it. So just want to let you know that's coming your way. We'll talk about it a little bit again next month, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that one.
Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kim Conrad. Kim is one of our members of the Excellence Network. And if you don't know what the Excellence Network is and you'd like more information, you can reach out to me. You can email me at kthorne@fairfielddd.com, or there's information also on the Excellence Network website. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me and let me know. So Kim is our facilitator for this month, so take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I see we have a great group this morning. That's awesome. I'm excited about that. And it's so cold out. I'm glad we're doing Zoom. That makes it better so we can all stay warm. But today we got some awesome presenters from the county board. Pam Whiteley is going to present us on the National Association for Direct Support Services Ethics, Code of Ethics, which is also part of the DODD's new training program that we are required to take. So that's going to hit that spot for everyone. If they haven't had it yet, you're going to get it today. And then Lorelei Banks and Jen Walling is going to review the MUI and rights training for us, which is also an annual review that we need to have. So with that, I will also say that you will be muted. You can put questions in the chat if you'd like, raise your hand, or I think with the presenters today, you could probably even just unmute yourself and ask a question during the presentation at the time. And then if you would have your cell phones off so it's not disrupting when you are unmuted. And you know about, I said the chat box. Kristen already talked about putting your name and email address in the chat box so you can get your certificates. And I think that's everything at this point in time. So I want to turn this over to Pam and we'll get started this morning.
Thanks, Kim. Well done. So yeah, just a couple things with that. So the NADSP Code of Ethics is something I've been really, really excited about. It was added to the annual training topics and the initial training topics. The downside is it's not required on an annual basis for DOOs, which is interesting because if anybody needs to have ethical decision making, you would think they would include that group of people. But anyway, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it to this group, because not all of you will necessarily have to have it. And you still have to do the annual requirement that the DODD posts to My Learning. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. When they have a training that's available for you and it fulfills those requirements, you have to take them through that. If we were to do it, we would just read the slides that they give us, and I don't really want to do that. And I don't think you want me to do that. So just go on there and get your topics still through them. What we're going to do today, though, is dig into the ethics a little bit more, because their training really just kind of reads them to you. And what I want to do is kind of analyze them and apply them and practice them, because I feel like that's really where we're going to get the learning to happen. So there's 9 tenets to the NADSP Code of Ethics. And they're straightforward. This isn't going to be something that you're like, what? That's an ethical code? That's crazy. It's going to be, yeah, of course this is. What I find interesting about these is they offer you some really great content that you can braid into your business practices. If you are working with DSPs with what they're doing on a daily basis, and they tend to, like, maybe they veer off course and you want to bring them back to where they should be, you can bring the Code of Ethics into your conversation and say, tell me, person-centered planning is something it's a code of ethics that they have. And so have that discussion. You can even stem from there. So you can use that. You can also weave these into your policies and practices too, that you have in writing. So I'm going to show you, I have put in the chat at the very top, there is a Code of Ethics fillable form. So this is even something that when you're doing like an onboarding, and of course they're going to go through and do the training online too, but this is something that if you decide to enrich a bit more, you can have them fill this out. It's just a signing that they understand everything that they've gone through. And if you can't find it, we're going to email it out to everybody too. So you'll get it one way or another. So I'm going to share my screen. These are available online on their website. If you go to NADSP. And you'll see up here, I just went into Code of Ethics. It's under resources. Go to ethics, you'll go to here. Now they're going to ask you to put in some information, and then you can download a PDF copy of these to have with on paper, because that's what I like to. But as you go through this, really take time to read. I just love all the things they put into their reasoning for these Code of Ethics, the preamble vision. Something that I just pulled out of that is, and I don't think people really understand this outside of the world that we work in, but the people who assume the complex role of a DSP, they have to continuously examine their own values and beliefs while honoring those of the people they support. And you'll notice that's right here on this sentence right here. I think that's something that happens all the time, especially when we're talking about, we're challenging a status quo all the time, and also working in this person-centered thought process into this. So we have to always be checking our own biases and values and how they relate to supporting somebody else. Looking at the purpose of this, and all of this is not really in the training that the state will give you either. So that's why I'm kind of going over it a bit more. So the purpose, obviously, some of the things that I thought were really cool in this, they're going to fall right in line as assisting people who need support to lead self-directed lives and participate fully in our nation's communities. And our nation's communities, not in simulated communities, but in the nation's communities. I want you to remember that. The emphasis is on empowerment and participation. But here's the part that right here, this sentence right here is something that I find to be so critical. So the prejudices of society form powerful barriers. Yet too often the very social policies and service systems, that's us, designed to help and can create other barriers. And so we're going to dig into that a bit more today. But what those do is they prevent the people that we are here to support from really getting that rich and fulfilling life. And so these ethics are going to be designed to kind of keep that in check. Looking at the mission, obviously we know that when we're working with somebody, we're going to look at the unique gifts, preferences, and needs of each person you support, and then the walk-in partnership. Something you might recognize and maybe you don't recognize is our system is a very power over system. And that's what we have to check. We have to recognize that that's what's happening and figure out how do we walk with people. Looking further at this mission, all DSPs must exemplify ethical practice, high standards, and creative vision. I don't see anything about health and safety in there. I don't see anything about creating a list of things for people to do. You have to exemplify the ethical practice, high standards, and a creative vision. So the entire landscape of a person's life can change through ethical and intentional direct support services. All right, so I think, let's see here, where else are we going to pull some stuff out of there? Again, you should take time and really dig into this more because there's just so much good meat in here. All right, so as a result, the DSPs face ethical decisions on a daily basis and consistently feel the tension between the ideals of the profession and its practice. And that's what I want to talk about more. And then if you ever do trainings with me, I challenge that all the time, is what are the ideals and what has history told us we should do? And then what's the actual practice of this? What should we be doing? Let's see here. Let's go down through a little bit more. Okay. So something to remember too, though, is that the Code of Ethics is not the handbook for the profession, but it's rather a roadmap to help assist in staying the course of securing freedom, justice, and equality for all. And that's their words. Okay, so then you'll see, then it digs into the person-centered supports is obviously the first tenet. Promoting physical and emotional well-being is the second tenet. Integrity and responsibility. Confidentiality, justice, fairness, and equity, respect, relationships, self-determination, and advocacy. What I find interesting about ethics is that when you hire somebody, you assume that they've been raised and exposed to these types of ethical behaviors. And it's just not always the case. So what do you do if you recognize that, or how do you build that into your hiring process so that these are understood, their expectations of the role and the responsibilities of what the people are doing? And then how do you continue to foster that when you do hire them and you're working with people, your DSPs? Okay, so we're going to really just kind of focus on this one right here. So training, we could do trainings on each one of these things individually. Because there's just so much to uncover with all of them. But we're really just going to focus on integrity and responsibility. So as you see, and each one of these has like a drop down that will uncover more. So it just has the initial thing, and then you can see down will be furthermore as a DSP I will. And we're going to go into these some more. So the one thing that I want to kind of hit home, because we have this is a network of providers. You guys are all to work together. I think as soon as we realize that as a service system and as a network of providers that we are not in competition with one another, we're not even competing with what DODD says or what Medicaid says, but we're competing with hundreds of years of a mindset regarding the worth and value of people with disabilities in our society. That's what we're competing with. And so as soon as we recognize it, I think we will come together more than apart in order to figure out how do we work together to make this happen. So this obviously is going to be directed towards DSPs, but I want this to be a more global view as far as everybody within the system. And hopefully you'll see that too. All right, so the first one, be aware of my own values and how they influence my professional decisions. I don't know how many of you really take time to kind of pull out what are your personal values? How do you live your life? How do you know when something's coming your way or when you have to make a decision that's challenging your values? If you're not in line with that and you don't know what those are, I recommend you taking time to do some soul searching and figure out what that is so that you can know when you're off course. I also think you need to figure out those values so that you can know whether this is where you belong as a professional. You know, it might not fit those values of what you hold true. So what we're going to do is, as we go through these, we're going to break out into smaller groups, which Ann will help. I'm going to pose a question. So there won't be any county board staff with you. It's just going to be you guys, all the providers, talking together about these. The first question that I want you to kind of chat about, first of all, introduce yourself if you don't know the person, because that's what polite people do. Second of all, make sure you can turn your camera on if you can. Third of all, for those of you who may be multitasking, let's push pause on the other tasks and really dedicate our time right now to one another. And fourth of all, have fun. So what we're going to do is you guys are going to get together. You're going to have a quick discussion. And then when you come back, one of you is going to kind of report out or share what you discussed in your group together. This is going to be so much fun. Get ready. Okay, so the first thing we want to discuss a time when you've noticed your personal values conflicting with your professional decisions or decision you've had to make. Was there a positive impact during this situation? And maybe if you didn't think about it, maybe think about if there was a positive impact and describe that. What did that look like? Anybody have any questions about this question?
Anne, how long would you like your breakout rooms to be?
Let's do 5 minutes.
And will the question be posted in the breakout room?
It will not, because I don't know if you know, but what happens in breakout rooms stays in breakout rooms. And so if I would recommend, Pam, will you throw your question in the chat and they can just copy it and then somebody can throw it in the chat in the breakout room. County board staff, I'm going to automatically assign participants. Can you just leave the room once you get assigned? That way our folks who are on the phone will all automatically get moved as well. And I am going to give you a 15-second counter. So it'll start counting down at the top of the screen before you get moved back through cyberspace back to our Zoom room.
Yep. Sorry, I'm working on it.
You're fine.
Together.
I could have been on time. I had a scheduled interview that didn't show up on me, so.
Oh,
Been going around.
And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Awesome. How was the ride? Was it fun? Whee! Okay.
It was fast.
Yeah, you gotta buckle up. Very good. Well, I hope you got to at least talk with somebody new, maybe meet somebody you never knew was another provider in your area. If not, you just were able to get reacquainted with somebody you've known forever and ever, and it was good to see them. Okay, so we can do this one of two ways. Somebody can volunteer to share what they talked about. Or Kelly Bauman, we'll start with you. Either way, we can either do this one of two ways.
Shocker. Good morning, everyone. So we talked about that. That's a heavy question. But at the same time, the consensus of the group is many of us are in this profession because of our values. And so we don't see a lot of conflict with the values that we personally have to the people that we serve. The one issue that, we're nurturing, we're advocating, we're fostering, we're promoting that independence. The one thing that we did touch about is just reminding ourselves the boundaries that we're not going to save the world and that we have to allow the growth on our on our consumer side and just not come in and save the world, but allow them to grow where they are. So I think boundaries was the only topic that really resonated in our group. But oh no, I think our values, we do what we do because of our values.
Mhm.
That's
Awesome.
my 2 cents.
Beautiful. Thank you for the 2. I liked it. I'm 2 cents richer now. All right. Who else would like to?
I'll go for our group just so we can get it out of the way.
Yeah.
We, I mean, we was just kind of having a discussion and we didn't want to come to a consensus like Kelly's group did. Congratulations, Kelly, you guys did great. But we was like, oh my gosh, we're going back so early. But anyways, we just kind of talked about a little bit, we just touched on about Allison had shared that personally, she really hasn't had that type of a conflict. I just kind of said that sometimes throughout my years of experience in different areas that I have seen staff take shortcuts and I'm not comfortable with that. When I was direct care in different settings, you know, you would see things that wasn't right. And sometimes some of my decisions, I think, maybe not always from conflict, but wound up being I would leave the job, not knowing where I was going to be headed, but things always worked out and I just moved on to better places, hopefully was my goal. But because sometimes you just can't resolve all resolutions in that setting that you're in. So you got to do what you got to do and move on sometimes. But that was really kind of what we talked about. And if I missed anything, guys, please jump in there and say something.
Must have hit the nail on the head. Well done. Awesome. All right, cool. Who else would like to share? We'll take a couple more here.
My name is Kate McAndrews. I'm sorry, my camera isn't doing a good job today. I don't know what's going on. It's dark. But anyway, didn't have a lot of discussion. I don't know, maybe there was a problem with the mics today. I don't know. But I mean, the only thing that I'll say is I tried to just throw out that if you stick with your personal values, wherever you are in any situation, including professional decisions, there's usually a positive outcome, you know, as long as you stick with them. You just have to stand by them. And that was my comment.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It's a good thought. So even if the outcome isn't what you had hoped to be, you led with your values and it was something that you believe in. So no matter what the outcome is, you feel good in your own heart about what you've done, what you've talked about. Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. Who else?
Well, we also discussed about being kind to one another. It's one of the most important things that we have to show while we are here in this field, and not just only in this field, but to everybody, because what we show is what we receive.
Yeah, absolutely. Kindness can go a long way. And I think with kindness, sometimes we have to do difficult things like show respect with hard conversations, but that's kindness when I respect you enough to have this conversation with you. So kind of exploring what that kindness looks like, I think is a really important thing too to bring up. Thank you, Maria. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to have to move on because we're going to break out about 17 more times. So just hang on. All right, so it's not 17, don't worry. It's only 16. So I'm going to share again. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to wait. I moved my screen because I kicked myself out last time.
We kind of know technology sometimes.
Yeah. If we've all been, we've worked on our patience with people on technology, that's for sure. All right, very good. So moving on down this furthermore as a DSP, I will. So looking at maintain competency in my profession through learning, ongoing collaboration with others. I want you to take note. This does not say compliance. Compliance is a given. It's an understood. It should be something you just do. competency is something that we have to strive for. And I don't know that this is always the focus collectively throughout the entire system. So we have to be able to, as a professional, understand that I need to, if I come across something where I'm oh man, I don't know how to do this. I don't just fake my way through it. I got to figure out, I got to learn, call somebody, talk with them. And then that's where, when we're talking about these 6 hours of additional training that you need for your annual topics, this is a great thing to recognize. If there's something in my job that I really am not strong with, that's where I need to focus. Ongoing professional learning will not happen if you focus on compliance. It just won't. Okay, so moving on, assume responsibility and accountability for my decisions and actions. Of course, this is something we talk about. How do we foster this as a culture within our organizations? I think sometimes responsibility and accountability are hard for people to do when there is a punitive power over feeling within the organization that I work. I'm going to pass the buck. I'm not going to feel it's very vulnerable for me to be able to do these things. And some of this is part of somebody's personal values, might be just, I have to do these things in order to stay true to who I am. And there's other people where that is super scary. We have to recognize that. And how do we create a culture where this isn't a scary thing? This is just a basic responsibility. And because everything we do comes back to supporting the human potential of another. And if we can't do these things, then we're dropping the ball with that responsibility. Okay, advancing my knowledge and skills through ongoing professional development and lifelong learning. Okay, that kind of tags on to the competency. And also keep in mind that goes back to that 6 hours. Use that as a springboard for those. All right, so actively seek advice and guidance on ethical issues from others as needed to inform ethical decision making. So some of you may be new, some of you may be less new to the field. And so I want you to think about a time when you've been faced with a hard ethical decision. And it might even be something that like later you didn't even recognize it as an ethical decision, but it is. Or maybe it was something that you had to go somebody else just to find guidance. Where did you go for your guidance? And where do you wish you would have gone for this guidance? So think of a time you've been faced with an ethical decision. Where did you go for guidance? And what did that guidance look like? And is there somewhere else you wish you could have gone? So we're going to break out again.
Pam, do you want same groups?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
But I left for a room. Can you not push me away again?
It's automatically assigned.
So I just come back?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody. So have fun. Another heavy one.
Nice.
Are we all back?
You were all back.
Welcome back, everyone.
You like
great to
Star Trek
see
every
you.
time we do that. Beam me up, Scotty, and we just zoom back to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's so jarring. Even though you don't really go anywhere, it just feels like my neck hurts after it. It's crazy. Awesome. So how was the conversation? How'd we get with it? Where'd we go with it? Let's see if some new people who didn't share the last time, just but what a share.
I can go. I can go ahead and share, Pam, if that's okay.
Go for it. Yeah, that sounds great.
So we were kind of stumped a little bit, felt like we were put on the spot, which is unusual. But I think what it came down to in our group was that we kind of struggle with what we want to do versus what it is that we're required to do. And again, it goes back to boundaries. And Kelly and I were obviously in the same group, but it was the same with the first question. It's that boundary that's in place. And sometimes it's a struggle when you want to kind of swoop in and fix everything and make it all better, but you have protocol that you have to follow.
Yeah.
In terms of, where we go for support, I feel like Kelly and I have both, and Elise, been blessed with amazing supervisors and support that allow us to kind of bounce ideas off of them and get that important feedback. Then at the end of the day, also know what it is that we're required to do. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Something else to recognize too, and the whole point of this network is you guys are all in the business, so, kind of a similar thing. So reach out to each other if you've talked with somebody and say, hey, I got this going on and I'm having a hard time, and somebody can help you. It's not like you need somebody to tell you what to do, because that's what this business is about. Somebody's going to fix my problems, because you just said that's what we all are designed to do, is to fix. So it's not reaching out, having somebody tell me what to do, or going to my supervisor and saying, I don't know what to do, fix it for me. You need to be guided, guide one another. And that's because that's what we're doing with people we're supporting, is we're guiding, right? We're working with people. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, who else we got? Kathy, do you want to talk?
Okay, tell me.
Tell
Okay,
you?
hold on. I
Okay.
think so. Hold on. Okay, tell me the question
There she
again. I
is.
talked a little bit.
Did you talk with your group that you just went out to?
I did. But tell me the
Sweet.
question.
All right, the
Okay.
question was, what was a time when you've had to face an ethical decision and you weren't really sure what to do and you had to go somewhere for guidance? What did you do? What did that look like?
So I actually didn't go for guidance, but I was speaking with the other ladies about an incident where my client started talking about things that was never, that's not talked about in the home. So the new person, I know for a fact, when there's a new person dealing with your clients, they tend to start doing new things or mimicking. So he started mimicking words like the devil and all of this. So I spoke to the mom and told her I would speak with the driver. I know that she was new. And when I went to speak with her, she was a lot of other things were going on with her that I noticed. May have been some type of chemical abuse or something, but she was pretty battered when I saw her. She was the bus driver. And I just asked her to watch what she says around him, because he's repeating what you're telling me. So that was pretty much it.
It's a great example though. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I also, for me, doing anything concerning kids, I include everybody as my team. So whatever part you play with my client, which is Cordell, you're part of my team. So I come from an era where you had to, put your best foot forward. So I don't want to put that on somebody else, but, I expect that. But at the same time, I know how to back up, because everybody needs a little room to grow, where maybe an area I'm already in, or maybe they're trying their best. But because they're my team, I have to associate with them as my team and get
beautiful. Yeah, Kathy, that's great, because that's actually you just kind of segued us to our next area. So I'm gonna push pause on that, because I'm gonna pick it up, because that was a great example of something we're gonna talk about here in just a second. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Who else would like to share one more thing, and then we're gonna move on?
I'll go ahead and share. It was a little personal,
thanks.
so I was going back and forth about it. But so I my first kiddo I had when I wasn't married. I was in a relationship, but I wasn't married yet. And I grew up in the church, and so that was like a big thing. And so I wanted to get my daughter christening, and so I went to the pastor and asked about it, and I was told that I could not go before the church and christening my child because I wasn't married at the time. So I either had to have like someone in the church, like a leader, or my parents christening, go before the church and have her christening. And that really hurt me. I was like really hurt because I'm like, what? You want me to do what? And so I, as far as the last question where it says, who you wish you could have gone to for this guidance, I wish I could have just prayed about it and just kind of followed, whatever I felt like it was hurt at that time. But I was so hurt that I went to my mom and told her what happened. And I kind of asked her, like, if she would, take her up there. And she was like, I don't even feel comfortable doing that because I don't agree with that either. Like, you are her mother. And so long story short, she ended up not being christening because I, after thinking about it some time, I just felt like for me, it was hurtful and I just didn't agree with the policy. So I just didn't have her christening, which, was hurtful too as well. But it was just a decision that I chose to make because it was my own personal beliefs and I just didn't feel like it was right.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good scenario. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no
Jeez.
problem.
Yeah, because there's so much in that. And there's so much in that. And I'm sure there's people who could probably have had some kind of scenario that's similar to that in a way, especially if they grew up in a church or with specific values that they had to continue. But if we all know that, like, through life, sometimes our values morph and sometimes things change and we grow and we become independent. We kind of can, the more experiences we have, we tend to change and shift. And it doesn't mean bad. It just means different than where we started, right? But it stinks when it's not supported with people that you thought should support it. I'm sorry about that.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kim, can I jump in?
Beautiful. Yeah, who wants to jump? Go, Ann.
And I was thinking about what Kara was saying, and I think that one of the challenges that when we are spending a lot of time with somebody is making sure that that ethical struggle that we have doesn't get applied to somebody else. In Kara's situation, the church was, forcing her into their beliefs. And so I think sometimes when we spend a lot of time with people, we have to be cautious that, even the folks that we're writing services for, or that we're working with might not think exactly the same way that we do.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's where when you get into the preamble and the stuff that's leading up to the ethics, it is that balance of, in this role, where we are right now, we have to see where that fits, but then also we're working with somebody else and it's their journey that we're supporting, right? And so we have to recognize when our values or the things that we believe to be true are conflicting with somebody else so that they don't have that opportunity to grow and create their own set of values too. All right, 10 minutes. So that changes my plans, which is cool because nothing ever goes according to plan for me. I just want to put this up one last time and then because I want to kind of close out here. And I appreciate you guys have done beautifully. Hopefully you've gained some kind of value out of this experience and talking with one another. Hopefully it's given you an opportunity to start a conversation with somebody you never have. And maybe that's somebody that can support you with some of these questions that we've had. So the last couple of bits here, bullet points, are to recognize the importance of modeling valued behaviors to coworkers, people you support, and community at large. So these are all obviously just kind of hammering home the same idea. What we were going to do, and then the last one's practice responsible work habits. I think these two are kind of ambiguous and left up to people to decide. And so sometimes that can be a challenge, right? If what I find to be a responsible work habit is not what you find to be a responsible work habit, if I have never learned what responsible work habits are, how am I going to model anything? So kind of keeping that in mind and thinking about that within your own organizations. What are you modeling? What are your DSPs modeling, not just to one another, but the people they support and then the community at large, right? Society, what are they seeing? When I'm taking a mass of people and we go into a place and we wander around and then we leave that place, what is society thinking? What could they possibly take away from that experience? And is that really what we want? What's the intention there? I'm not saying anybody's doing this per se that's on the screen right now, but it is something that still occurs within the system. And that's a pretty bold example. But thinking about this, and how many opportunities do we have to model these valued behaviors? When we talk about people with disabilities within society, and I mentioned, hundreds of years of a mindset that I know some of you guys have. I check myself all the time on these mindsets because it's how I was raised. What was the exposure I had to people with disabilities? How often was I side by side with somebody, friends with somebody? It's a unique thing if somebody grew up with somebody with a disability, or if I had a good friend and they had a disability. A lot of people didn't, or they had something that, or they knew somebody that they weren't allowed to talk about disability, wasn't diagnosed. So keeping in mind that we've been shaped to have certain values and views towards it. And one of them is to fix because we view people as broken. One of them is to heal because we view people as sick. One of them is to keep people in this eternal child. So we think of activities that they can do because that's what they like. But that's the role that they were born into, because that's the role that society has given them. So as a system, as a network of providers, use these ethics to challenge that, challenge yourself, challenge one another, and really think about how are we shifting these mindsets so that people can live a life that they don't have to be predestined to live. How can they live a life that looks like anything that we have? And so with that, that's about all I have. There's the last 5 minutes. That if anybody has anything that they want to, a burning desire that they want to talk about, please raise it up, put it in the chat, because we're going to move on to the next really cool conversation that Jen's going to do, which is MUI. So it's going to get better from here. And she makes it really cool and much better than what it could be, right, Jen? Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all for your time, your energy. Thank you all for sharing your time and energy with one another, turning your cameras on, and offering up some really, these were heavy questions because, go big or go home. That's how I feel. So, oh, and Lorelai is here too. Yeah, great. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate that presentation this morning. And the workout groups, I think, is really good for us to get in small groups. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did too. So, all right. Well, so we're going to move on to Jen Walling and Lorelai Banks, and we're going to talk about some MUI and rights information. So I don't know who's coming up first, if it's Jen or Lorelai.
We just bounce back and forth.
Okay, there you are. Well, there's Jen. All right, take it away.
So good morning, everybody. I don't know, did you guys need a little break? Like just a minute? Nope, we're good. Okay, I just want to double check that. There should have been some handouts that came attached to the invitation today. So hopefully everybody got those. Okay. It should have come in a new email today. And if you didn't get them, we'll get them to you. Just throw your name in the chat that you don't have them, and we will work to get those to you.
And we'll also
and we
make
may
sure they're
even have
attached
like
to the portal. When we're
Excuse
done
me?
today. They'll get put on the portal with the meeting
Okay,
recording.
awesome. All right, there you go. So you'll have them. So anyway, I just see, do I have ability to share screen? Is that okay? Awesome. So I'm gonna do that. Share. Does everybody see that? Because now I can't see, so at some point
Jen,
I'm confused with that.
We can see it, but it's not in presenter view. Did you want to do that?
Yeah, I'm trying to get, okay, I just wanted to make sure it was there.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. Go to slideshow. And from beginning. So is that better?
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. So welcome to the 2022 Provider MUI Training, where we come to connect. And I want to ask everybody, why are we here? I think if we start out with the why, we usually can lead to better answers and working through that. So you're going to probably hear that a lot as we go through today's training. So the rule is probably why we all feel like we're here. But we want to focus on the fact that the rule is part of building a quality assurance system to look at health and safety. And so if we focus on the best life, a happy life, a safe life, then we're building independence and we're getting to those outcomes. So if we're always thinking about those things as our focus and the quality of the improvement for individuals that need a little bit of support to get through their daily lives. And when we think about this, people get a lot of times all this, is this an MUI? Is this a UI? Do I send this? Do I do that? And so I figured that's kind of the root of the why. The why is the incident report. You know, something happened. So we're responding with immediate actions with the goal of health and safety. And then we're looking at why. Why did it happen? You know, what caused it? What are we going to do to make things better? So no matter whether, you know, it's being reviewed by the team and the agency at the UI level to follow that part of the rule, or whether it has led to those next steps and being reviewed through the county board and at the state level for those higher significant pieces of health and safety risk, they're all going to start in the same place, the incident. So if we focus on what is important about the incident report, collaboration. If we don't tell someone's story, if we don't share how they got there that day, the when, the what, the why, the where, we can't build together to figure out how to advocate for that person, how to help them have different outcomes because something happened. And they don't always have to be bad things that have happened. And I think a lot of times people get very focused on MUI is bad. An incident occurring is bad. We have things that happen all day long in our lives, every day, that we have to use problem-solving pieces to get to those next steps. So I want to start with the incident report, and I want to talk about the important elements that leads us to the prevention pieces, the deeper dive that the team is going to have, and the individual in the end is going to have better success. They're going to have a safer, happier, better life because the team and they have had the input to also guide that. So making sure that it's clear who the incident report is about. You would think that might be one of those very common pieces, but oftentimes we are struggling to figure out who the report may be about. Who is sending in the report? And I know this copy is not good, but it's just generally, we know this is the one that's on the website. Many of you are familiar with it. So I'm just kind of guiding through some of those pieces. The date of the incident, super critical, starts our timeline, starts the kickoff of the review, whether it's UI review of the team or whether it's an MUI review of an investigator. The time, those things can be critical pieces based on changes in transitions of who was with the person, whether they needed to be somewhere else, whether something in the system isn't working. It might help put that right out there to identify that. The location of the incident. It's very important to think about defining that in the best way possible. You know, bedroom is not always the best descriptor of, you know, is it the upstairs bedroom? Is it, you know, if you need to tell the story so that when someone's looking at this and they're reviewing it, that they're getting the details and the idea of what you're trying to provide based on the situation. And then the description of the incident. We want to always think about being in third person because we're telling the story about someone else, not about us, but about the focus person of the incident, the story that needs to be told. Being very descriptive. There, it says summary, but if there's details that need to be included, timelines, what was happening before, what happened next, how it led up to it, use another piece of paper, say continuation, put it on there. Don't be afraid of that part of what needs to be told. People often think that I need to be really brief. And so, well, he fell and it was at the store. That doesn't tell us much about the person. It also leads to more questions and things of that nature. So being as descriptive as possible so that someone who might read this 6 months from now, maybe a new provider that's going to come in and review, maybe when you're going back to look at rebuilding some things in the ISP, how does it help put everybody in that framework? Notifications. Often we find that the notifications are lacking from incident reports. And those too can be very critical pieces of who needs to know, what immediate actions were going to come from those people knowing that, and what preventative measures may be in place because those notifications were made. And there are some pieces that are required. It is required that a guardian be made aware of situations. Now, some guardians might say, I only want to know about X, Y, and Z. Then that needs to be clearly communicated somewhere so that you don't have to bombard. That's okay. But everybody needs to know that that's a communication piece and we don't get lax in the important parts that need to be reported. The ISC needs to be provided information of incidents so that they can look at it with the team, drive the supports, change the plan, maybe include additional hours, do different pieces of that. So it all builds. Every bit of it is the why that we are building towards those next steps. And if those notifications are made, then that's half the battle. If you had a job application and you're going down through it and you thought, I don't really, they don't need this phone number. They don't need that. What do you think the response is going to be for, the piece of, how you're communicating something? So we can't just decide that it's not important to fill out pieces of the incident report. And sometimes we might not have, or next steps of person who is doing that. Make that clear somewhere that you called and left a message and someone's following up. Just make sure that it's communicated how the steps are taken. Witnesses. We want to make sure that we're including all people that are in the surrounding area that may have information to provide. So that doesn't mean we're only looking at staff or we're only looking at, it's anyone who might have done that, might have more information to look back. Then those immediate actions, those are the things that are paramount. We're going to take those steps and look at those things and make sure that we are getting the safety first, those next steps, everything that has to happen, that's paramount always. And then the prevention plan. And so immediately when something's happening, we're starting to already think about one step of prevention. And those things may build as you learn more, as you go to talk to those witnesses, as you do those pieces. So that's an ongoing revolving process throughout whatever occurred. And again, doesn't matter if it's an MUI, doesn't matter if it's a UI. We're reviewing that something happened and that where there needs to be some response or there needs to be some education of an obstacle that was there for the team that changed things to make that part of happy life, safe life, better life a challenge. And if we look at it like that, we're not, putting anybody under a microscope. We're not making this process about anything other than improving quality. improving process, improving support, building those outcomes, and having achievement of ultimate goals for the individual involved. Making sure that you put your name and that you sign it. Those are important pieces of the incident report. So we talked a little bit about those immediate actions, and what we want to think about with immediate actions is it's whatever. There is no set checkbox of what that might be. So whatever becomes safe in the moment, but we do want to make sure that we're always thinking about, do we need to call 911? Has the person been checked for injuries? If we go in and find that the refrigerator went off and everything was, spoiled in it, what are going to be our immediate actions? We're going to think about those processes, making sure they have food available, finding out those things. So making sure that we're always thinking about how to respond is super important. Before all things, we have to act, we have to respond, and action changes things. And so that's what we always have to think about. The next piece of this is looking to, what caused it. So the incident happened, we've done all our immediate actions, and now we're like, why did it happen? What caused something? What contributed to it? And if we take the 5 elements here and think about, was it a process? Was it something to do with human factors? Was it equipment? Was it environment? Was it materials we didn't have? Are those the things, and how can we define those things and look at it in that critical piece of what are our best responses? Building to the prevention plan. And then if we take those things that become causing contributing factors and we answer each of those with a measure of prevention, then we are working that much better to lessen risk. We're building innovation in this piece of things. We're thinking outside of the box. It's not all about, how it is just because someone falls, this is the magic steps that we do. Every situation is going to be different. Every individual has different challenges, obstacles, and resilience to bring to what happened and why and what the response needs to be. So a tool that can be used, and this is on DODD's website, it's one of the handouts that was sent out, that something teams should be practicing, providers should be using in responses to incidents, is the 5 whys. And if you're not familiar with this, there's going to be some additional training that we're going to do about writing better UI investigations, doing those reports. Those are things that are going to be coming this year. And just bringing that back. What's the root cause? If we get to those causing contributing factors, what really was the thing? So then we know what we need to think about putting in place. So if we answer for those things, then we have our team collaborating together to come up with better prevention, better support, better outcomes, building independence, and hopefully getting some sustainability to where we are moving forward with lessened risk, less likely of MUIs. So if we take that piece and we fall back to the incident report, and we keep asking ourselves, how can we do that part better? We're building ourselves to where the MUI part is not as scary. The process of things being looked at and moved forward grow to our prevention plans. And so as we've taken that incident report and we've looked at those things, we're going to take our rule as sort of some scaffolding there to say, we know what we have to do. We know where these things happened, and we're going to look at who's going to be responsible to do something that addresses the cause and contributing factor. What will be done? When will it be completed? Where are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it? If we focus on that and make it person-centered and use our own design. So when we say the rule, everybody has the rule to have to rely upon for health and safety. Everybody has certain reporting requirements. but we don't all have to use the same design. We use that as our part to build for, to look at the person and be their advocate, to help them have what's best for them based on what occurred, and not get into any type of cookie cutter process. And prevention is key. When we think about what assessments are needed, are there evaluations? Does there need to be more team discussion? You know, what needs to be looked at, tracked, you know, taking the plan and making sure, training individuals about something they didn't understand, helping train the person who you're supporting to have a better resilience in what's happening, because maybe they need to be a part of it. We need to not just decide that, oh, so-and-so can do this and so-and-so can do this and fix everything for them. We need to be able to bring parts in and build to where they are an active part of the communication, an active part of the change, the active part of their happy, safer, better life. You know, so building upon those things is going to continue to get us to the point where now we have these defined unusual incidents. And so these are the 12 things that in the rule says you must respond to these things. They must be reviewed. They must exist on your log. They must, you know, have these responses, and they're kind of set out as trends and patterns of things that probably lessen MUIs. So let's take a look at some things. So dental injuries. So, you know, that's something that, you know, can cause a lot of communication problems, eating situations. So that's why they need to be reviewed. Falls can be environmental. They can be your medication. They can be so many things that are leading up to something that if it's dealt with in the moment, and let's just say, well, you know, Susie falls all the time, so it's not become unusual anymore. We don't want to get into that process. We want to think about the fact that she fell. So what caused it? What are we going to do to get better? And are we tracking that this is becoming a trend so that we have a better prevention? And we are maybe not going to have an ER visit, and maybe we're not going to have a significant injury, which leads us next. So significant injury or injury that is not significant. So they've, you know, set these out to say, okay, somebody didn't meet that criteria to make it next level MUI, but we still need to take that same care, caution, control, and investigation to make sure that something is being identified so that they are, you know, getting through that injury just the same. Medication errors without health and safety risk. Again, maybe didn't rise to neglect, maybe didn't rise to a hospitalization, but we want to keep those things from happening. Overnight relocation due to fire. That can cause so many things. If the provider doesn't know to not come pick them up, that transition of service, whether their whole schedule is going to be off, where are their belongings, where are their medications? Those are all things, again, that aren't going to fit into an MUI level, but are going to require team response, follow up, and what's going to be done to assist. Natural disaster, same type of thing. Mechanical failure. Maybe the apartment building has put out a notice that they're going to be working on the elevator. And so what plans do we have to be doing in response to that? Those are communication pieces that need to have some discussion and make sure that everyone's prepared for. Peer-to-peer act that is not a major unusual incident. So anytime two peers have something that occurs, and when we say peers, we're talking about anybody served by any county board, anywhere in the state that come in contact with each other, and that we need to make sure that there's a safety piece, that there is the supervision was met, that maybe we've learned something new about this person and not, you know, wanting to have contact with someone else. We all have the ability to decide who we are around, how we change our schedules, and what we do. Sometimes the folks that we are involved with don't have that process. They don't get to make those changes. They're very scheduled. They're very regimented. This service provider ends here. This picks them up there. It takes them there. We have to make sure that we're not avoiding discussing those pieces of someone's better life, safe life, happy life. Rights code violation without a likely risk. So rights code violations are always the thing that hopefully we can work as a team. Hopefully we can identify those pieces of things and move forward without them getting to the place that someone put themselves at risk or were injured because someone was trying to take away their voice, choice, and control. Unapproved behavior support without a likely risk to health and welfare. So when we're talking about this, a simple hands down that was a prompt that may not be in the plan, but didn't cause an adverse reaction from the person, did not put them at risk of their health and welfare. But we don't want to just make that be the thing of, okay, well, it's okay to do that. We need to get to the root cause of what caused the person to have something that they needed that response, that everyone felt that was what needed to be done, and that we're looking at those in a better light. Emergency room and urgent care visits. So obviously, if someone goes to the ER, there's discharge plans, there's changes, there's needs, there's collaboration of pieces of things that we hope is just an ER visit and return back home, follow up with your doctor, and everybody goes along their happy way and everything is better. But if we don't pay attention to urgent care visits, if we don't pay attention to emergency room visits, if we don't make sure those follow-up discharge things are followed and done and collaborated with the team, then we have those issues that become those unanticipated hospitalizations. And then finally, the program implementation incidents, which is like this catch-all thing of all the pieces of what used to be filed as neglects. We had someone who put themselves in a moment of no supervision, but nothing happened. So then we need to be reviewing. That's one of those things where like, wow, they stayed home for this amount of time by themselves. They did this, they did the right things. Those are the times to applaud and move forward to those pieces of things and make sure that we're, again, not everything has to be bad. Some of the prevention, some of the causing contributing factors, some of those pieces lead to those less restrictive environments, those more independent places, those, growth in their outcomes. But those have to be reviewed. So I want to take a minute and just look at the role of a provider in a UI process. Really, pretty much, those things are pretty in line, whether you're an independent provider or whether you're an agency provider. But where those things change, so immediate actions, you're going to write an incident report. You're going to make notifications. Now, some of the things that might be different in notifications, you need to notify the guardian and send an incident report to the ISC the first working day following the day of the incident, and then other providers as necessary. For the agency provider, they're going to notify the guardian and others that are part of the plan and notify other providers when necessary. So there's some pieces of, just making sure that an independent provider is definitely getting that information to the ISC to help support and respond. And then the agency might have other levels of pieces that it's going through, from the direct care role to the supervisor, to the house manager, to the different levels of things. So you have more supports on that end. Everybody is identifying causing contributing factors. Agency providers are investigating all incidents that meet the UI process, all those things we just went over, those 12 factors. You are completing incident and investigations on all of those things. The independent provider is making sure the ISC knows about it and the team is responding. The team is helping with that because you don't have these other people to help. You don't have someone to bounce pieces of it off. So you're having that part. Everybody is collaborating to develop the prevention plan and to implement it. Everyone is completing UI monthly logs and reviewing them and doing corrective actions. Everyone is sending in their UI logs to the county board when requested, and can be done quarterly. And then working with the team to ensure risks associated with UIs are addressed in the plan. So that leads us forward to the part that says that each agency provider, independent provider, shall maintain a log of all unusual incidents, and the log shall contain those 12 things that we discussed earlier that also are those key points that if we're working on those sooner, we're mitigating the possibility of MUIs. And that the log should have the individual, a brief description, injuries, dates, times, all the things that are in that incident report plan are being brought over in another place for it to be reviewed in sort of a timeline piece of things for that month, for that week. That throws us into those 3 in a week, 5 in a month. Do we need to take some steps? Does something need to change in the plan? What corrective measures are we doing? And the other part is that members of the individual's team shall ensure that risks associated with unusual incidents are addressed in the individual plan or the individual service plan of each individual affected. So you need to make sure that if there's a group situation, if there's a peer-to-peer, we're not just stopping with the one person who seems to be the focus of the incident. There are others that are part of that. And the log that we've been discussing, that you're going to put those things, have those pieces of the rule defined right at the bottom of it. Something important that I want to talk about with the unusual incident log is that you want to always make sure that you're identifying who is submitting it, what provider, what facility, and who the information is about. If you have you can mark through it. Often we've told if you don't have anything in January, you don't have anything in February, you can put it on the same form and just make sure the dates go across for that person. But you must sign that you reviewed it. You must answer the questions, even if it says there's nothing on there, that there were no trends and patterns identified, that there were no actions taken. And if there were actions taken, you're making sure to put those clearly on those on those logs. And the logs are what are going to drive your review for the individual, put things into the plan to, move forward too quick, to use this each month to build your annual report that you're required to do. So remember that you want to have team input, provider is responsible for this, but you're not alone to determine all the parts of the prevention plan. You're not alone to ensure that it's added to the plan, that things are happening, and that we're ensuring that any risk associated has been taken care of. So we have county board support, changes in the plan, and less MUIs is hopefully our goal, because we are building good preventions and responses. So the next slide is just risk. This is where things change. And everybody gets we can't assume every risk for every person. Well, that's not what anybody is thinking, but we have to think that for each person, what is that, what is the why of this could be a risk for this person, or we know this is a risk for this person. And so we want to make sure that we are always looking at that, but being, not being so encompassing that we have to put a bubble around every person. That's not what this is designed for. It's that if something happens and it reaches out to be that this is definitely going to be a continued risk for this person, and we need to get to somewhere to make sure that they are safe, the community is safe, that those things that we're identifying and talking about, those elements. Which then brings us on to the rule of the part about MUI. MUI is the alleged, suspected, or actual occurrence of an incident that there is reason to believe that health and welfare of an individual may be adversely affected, or the individual may be placed at risk of harm. So all of the things that we've been dealing with up to this point haven't, they may have had some risk that were not going to lead so much to being at harm, but a risk of, it being down the road. And so we're building to do that. There are 19 categories. You've got a handout called Understanding MUI. I think it's a great tool to use with families. It's a great tool to use with new hires. It's a great tool for retraining when you find that someone has had trouble identifying to report to you information that would need to move forward during those things. There are 3 categories. Those ones that are in orange doesn't mean that they're more important than the other categories, but those 10 are usually involved with other entities, people that are doing parallel investigations, which take precedent over our investigations, typically law enforcement, children's services, the coroner, different pieces that may happen with those elements. And when we look at this, we always want to think about alleged, suspected, and actual, and we always have problems with that. And we're mandated reporters. So if someone tells us something happened, we need to respond. There's a reason why you are either feeling a suspicion of something or that someone is telling you something. So listen when those things happen and report as mandated reporters. There are some of those things that have 4-hour reporting. So our timeline becomes much more crucial. And typically it's those ones that were in orange, that category A, because we have other people we have to notify. So that's that important piece of making sure that others are notified, that if it's a criminal act, we are involving law enforcement. If someone's misappropriated against, do they have the money to get next steps? So those 4-hour pieces are more about getting the team and response and immediate actions together often than it is, anything else. But everybody talking about it, everybody knowing that they need to respond and making those things are the important piece. So those category A ones are typically your 4-hour reportings. However, a category B of peer-to-peer sneaks into there. Does anybody know why? Anybody tell me why? Nope. Okay. So the why is that you have 2 people or 3 people or however that might happen that need different responses from different teams, from different places, from different reviews of safety, and from different parts of making sure that their stories are listened to, that how they felt about the incident and what responses need to take place by their individual teams aren't all just about the one person that we think was the focus piece of it. It's that there is more collaborative pieces of that. And we may need to look at those specifically to see if they meet the elements of next levels sooner than later. Where to report. So if you think an MUI has happened and you think it's one of those 19 categories, then during business hours, call us at the office, talk to someone about making sure that it's reported and that it's aware and that you're able to talk through any assistance and support that you need. Outside of business hours, you want to be calling the 740-687-8255, which is also known as the crisis line, and ask for the DD person on call so that you can get those proper notifications and some guidance if needed. And then after you've done those things, or if it is something that doesn't require a 4-hour reporting, doesn't require, that immediate things, and you're sending in your incident reports, you can use the incident report at Fairfield DD. But that's after you've reported an MUI, then you can say your next steps, and those are coming forward. As a provider, we always want to think about the fact that we are there to advocate for individuals' wants and needs. that if there is an administrative investigation going on, that people are cooperating. We want to collaborate on the development of prevention plans and make sure they're implemented. We can talk about prevention all we want, but if we don't put it into place, if we don't verify that it's occurring, if we don't answer those pieces and do those things, then the risk is still there. Work with the team to ensure risks associated with MUIs are addressed. So not only that piece with the UIs, but at the end, when the MUIs happen, this should be going along and there should almost be responses, changes, and things happening prior to the investigation being final. Now, there may be things that come out that help you add more things to your prevention, but you should steadily have those things already looked at because the cause and contributing factors are being discussed and reviewed. And then complete your annual report and send it to the county board. It's very important to do that. And you're using your UI logs to build that report. And so then again, you're reviewing that person. A very incredible resource out there that a lot of providers are not aware of is the interpretive guidelines to the MUI rule. And if you are responsible for your agency or as an independent provider thinking about what you should be reporting or guiding your team to look at, this can be an invaluable tool. Each category is defined. Each category gives you probes of things to help you prompt to think about, does it meet that? And then it gives examples. Now, this is for those things when you're like, yeah, I'm just not sure. Or as you're following through doing a UI investigation, something crops up and says, oh, wait a minute, this is a little different than what I thought this was at first. And that's when you've discovered it. And that's when it changed. And then that's when you're going to start that reporting process. So we want to make sure for everybody to know that we don't often have all the information right up front, or someone maybe wasn't as transparent as they should have been. And then we have to move forward with that. It's a great guide for you to use. I want you to think though, that as I said, we're going to stop and think. And if you're having anything about looking at a UI, anything you're learning later after the fact, just stop, call us, talk to us about it. That's what we're here to help you through. We're here to be that support and that guide through the process. It's important. I want to take, I put all these little icons around the edge of this screen to remind myself that I didn't forget to tell you that making sure that there's a list of contact information for those who need to be making notifications, making sure there's a clear plan of what a doctor's number is, who the doctor's names are, talking about that and making sure that those are in the communication part of the ISP. Calling supervisors, calling guardians, knowing who to call. Very important thing for you to share with your staff and the processes of the importance of making sure you have verbal contact with someone, because an email or a text, we don't know when it's going to get read. Oops, yeah. So knowing your rights. So the Bill of Rights, the Ohio Revised Code addresses that. This is a pamphlet that the county board has to use and is there for review. And the biggest piece that I want to think about when we're talking about the rights of individuals is that we need to honor voice, choice, and control. We are there to support. We are not there to eliminate them having growth. We're not there to decide that every single thing that might be a risk for them is vacuumed into a bubble for them. But as these things are happening, we want to make sure that we're honoring them. We want to make sure that we're discussing them. We want to make sure that they feel as much control in their life as possible. Even if they have a guardian, giving someone a guardian doesn't take away their choice about their spending money. It doesn't take away their choice about maybe not wanting to go to the dentist. It doesn't take away those things. These are discussions that we need to find out why they don't want to do those things. We need to look at the root cause of what might be a power struggle. And so just remember that we want to use this as a tool to help in growth. Lorelai, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I think that the handouts are extremely useful, and I would encourage people to, especially the Knowing MUI handout that Jen included, that has all those categories listed on it. Some of the things we've done in person is have people highlight the 4-hour categories, but that's just such a useful guide to keep with you. And I will tell you that I think that has helped a lot since we've started handing that out. So.
Yeah, and that was designed basically to help families understand the process. And so sometimes, like I said, everybody gets a little bit scared about something being reviewed. There's that piece that, you know, comes over that someone's going to be, you know, looking at this and just pointing out that, oh, I didn't do this, oh, I didn't do that. No, it's about learning a process, because we can't plan for everything. And we can't blame things away to the point of, you know, we have to look at those things and, you know, and take it forward and say, how are we going to do better? It's always about what's going to be the best, safest spot. So the state likes to make sure that we always talk about health and safety alerts. And specifically, they want us to talk about preventing choking. They did specific protocols in the last, you know, rule change, because, you know, if someone is gagging, choking, having troubles, something's changed. You know, we need to make sure that, is it just that we need to talk about, is it a certain food or texture? Is it that they need to see a doctor? You know, and as we're doing those things, we're less likely to have to do those preventative immediate actions like calling 911 or CPR or other things that could develop into an MUI. So use these as tools, as training, use these to help set out your prevention measures, use these to help, you know, learn how to identify some of those common things that we want to think about and discuss. The next one that they really focus on is fall prevention. And again, that's a UI category. That's a required response from the team when these things happen and what we should be doing. And it talks a lot about, you know, how it impacts a lot of things, and thinking about head injuries. Just because there's not blood gushing out of someone's head and they don't need stitches, just because a bruise didn't pop up right away, those are, you know, fragile pieces of our body that we all have to protect and be sure that we are thinking about and noticing changes. And then again, transportation. It's something that, you know, we all have places to be. We all have to think about how we're going to get from A to B. And we need to make sure that we're doing it as safely as possible, that we are, you know, talking about issues. Take it serious when someone says, my provider was taking phone calls while they were driving. If that's upsetting to the person, then we need to make sure that they feel safe. We need to make sure that we're taking that seriously. We need to think about, are we setting parameters for when we're calling people that we know they're transporting someone and we're adding to that risk. So all of those pieces of the process need to be looked at very carefully. And they give you prevention measures to look at. So in 2022, we haven't had any health and safety alerts yet. We've had a revisited stay safe in the winter, one that was sent out in February as just a reminder. I think because some of the weather was coming and everybody thought, oh, we better look at these things. So just know that you can subscribe to get these sent to you. They are great information for you to use and keep your staff up to date on things, keep yourself up to date on things, maybe helping you figure out some cause and contributing factors at times. So finally, the abuser registry process is something that we need to make sure to always discuss. Every agency should be making sure that each year that you're doing those checks, making sure, sometimes people work at other places. And as you're hiring people, that you're double checking that they're not already involved in this process. The county board does not decide whether someone is placed on the abuser registry. It's based on the substantiations for specific categories of misappropriation, of any of the abuse, neglect, that they review and determine need a further look. And we, as the county board, are required to look at something and make a determination of 51% that we think it occurred. And they are required to look at clear and convincing. So by no means, if an investigation is concluded and a substantiation is completed, that it is an automatic that that is going to occur. So just know that those are there. It's a process to make sure that we are having a quality representation of those who are supporting individuals. And if someone is not there to do that in the best light, that we don't want them in our field. So it is not about trying to get people in trouble. It is not about when you make one mistake and there's a supervision that caused something that needs some retraining or some refocusing of a systems. It's about those that are choosing to be predatory on individuals, that are choosing to not take the retrainings seriously, or continuing to do the same patterns that are not safe for individuals that need supportive services. And so I'm going to bring to this screen, which is best practices. And so I want people to, I can't see the chat. I wish I could. Maybe I can move it up here to do that. I could get my mouse to cooperate. Okay. I want to think about best practices. What does that mean? And so by sharing, by connecting, by asking why, by reviewing, by building, and focusing on best life, safe life, happy life. Those are our best practices. But what are our best practices when we're remembering to communicate with other agencies, to have that transparency, to build that transition of service so that we're not just dropping someone off, moving someone forward, doing this, that this has become that part of their life. This is the way that we are connecting, because that's all everybody wants. People want to be connected. People want to be part of community. People want to be safe. And there's nothing about what one agency does here or what one family member who's shared living does there, or how we're doing anything better if we stop focusing on who we're here to be connected with and why we've chosen to do this. So if anybody can think of a best practice of following up for UIs, just in general, tell me a best practice of something that you're trying to do or that you thought about today that you want to build. And just throw it in the chat. It could be anything.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it in regards to keeping up with the UI log or a UI incident? Because if it's a UI log, usually what I do is I put it on my Yahoo Outlook to remind me to make sure that every month I am filling out my UI log to keep in compliance.
Okay, So great point. So I think reminders to making sure that, because days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months and months turn into years. And the next thing we know, we're like, oh gosh. So I think having those pieces are great. But I guess part of what I want people to reach past is that log is a tool that sure it's required, but it's a communication piece. It's a team focus point. It's this is happening. And I often hear people say, gosh, we've been telling the ISC, we've been talking about this with whoever, we've been saying this for years and nothing's changing. It's those pieces of things that we want to get to that point, that if we're really deep diving in and talking and reminding us not just about the compliance piece of it, which is important, but that we're really looking at the instance. We're really looking about what we're logging. We're really taking the time to not be like, oh yeah, well, that happened, so we got to write everything up on this paperwork. We just got to fill this out. We need to take some of the process out and make sure that we're taking it back to the why. Why are we here? Why are we doing these jobs? Why are we providers? Why are we county board supporters? Why are we focused on the community inclusion, the independence, the growth, the resiliency of people? Why are we doing that? And it's simply put that we are taking something that happened and helping someone build it better.
Yes.
So putting that reminder is a great piece, and talking to your team about it, remembering that it's not there's no I in team. So everybody needs to have someone to discuss these things with. Everybody has a responsibility to make sure that things are addressed. Everybody has that responsibility to look at what could be causing and contributing to these things. And it could be from different angles. And it could be that there is something that's newly been discovered, that's a new resource, that if we don't write up what happened, no one can provide us with that information to help the situation get better. So other best practices about, so systems errors, rarely across new incidents when we realize something occurred, not because someone failed to follow the policy, but the system. Okay, so exactly, perfect. That's the kind of stuff that if it's, maybe it's what you could do, but we need to address that as a risk, that it's a systems issue. If I don't know that, there's something that stopped somebody from being able to show up, and they're trying to do 2 places at one time, and there's not enough time to even get from one to the other, we're probably going to have a supervision concern. So let's see what else is in there. Somebody can anybody help me if they see something else? Lorelei, if you see.
Well, I do kind of want to say also in best practice, as far as that communication piece goes with all of the team members that are involved, when we have those communication pieces in place, it can help to relinquish some of the stress or some of the confusion that's going on amongst certain providers. So if you're serving this person and you are helping them on a day-to-day basis, and you're seeing things that occur, and it starts to become frustrating because you really want to help them, and you really want them to grow, but the rest of the team doesn't know about it, then for example, the ISC can't address any of that in the plan if they don't have it. And if you come to them 4 months down the road and say, well, this is happening all the time, for the ISC to drive that plan, it all kind of goes back to those reporting and those best practices on reporting, so that there's data along with what the provider is communicating to support, to be able to address certain things, to change those things for that individual, to change those things in the plan. And so that communication piece is huge amongst the entire team, even if one person on the team is witnessing it and thinks maybe that it's not a huge deal. It actually can become a substantial situation in the future. So just having those best practices of open communication, no blame. And we want to make sure that when we're communicating as a team, we're not talking about, well, provider A did this, and so what do I have to do about that? Or the ISC isn't doing anything about that. That's why we talk about that communication team-wise, so that the entire team's aware, and that team includes the individual that we're serving and that we're talking about. If I go to a doctor's appointment and the doctor's having discussions, I don't want him to have those discussions with my husband, with my friend that's with me at the doctor's appointment, and they're talking about me. I want to be involved in that discussion as well, because I have a right to make decisions for myself, and I have a right to be involved in those discussions. So when we talk about best practices in communication, I think it's really important that not only is that communication piece there, but that everybody as a whole remembers that the individual that we're discussing and that we're helping build that plan around is a huge part and the central piece of that discussion as well.
Well, one thing that I want to think about too is that there, oftentimes it comes back to the plan. And so the plan is a document to drive outcomes, support, communication, supervision, growth. Those are all the things that's for. And so we have to be realistic. And so someone has, pointed that out to me previously and at different times that, when we're not realistic with, what we're doing, it's also, we have to be realistic in those preventions. And so, by having those things and making it be, it's very important to think about it in those terms. But if you always put yourself as remembering part of your role is to be an advocate for each individual that you provide services to, that if something's not meeting and you feel they need that voice, you need to be there for them. If a supervisor says to you, oh, it's okay, they do that all the time, but it's not in your heart sitting right, then you need to share that. You're mandated to make sure that things are reported and reviewed. If a doctor, you're taking them and the doctor says, oh yeah, we keep telling them about the diet, they don't do the diet, I'm tired of talking to them about the diet. Would we be okay with that in our own world? Would we be okay with that for someone we're taking our mother to the doctor or father or child? Would we be okay with that? So we need to help them learn how, and we need to not be part of that process. And so those are the things where I want to say, remind yourselves to always be the advocate. Remind yourselves to communicate. Remind yourselves to work as a team, build those best practices. Because in the end, when we are getting all those annual reports together, we're not getting them to just say, oh, this provider did this, oh, that. We're taking that and saying, as a community, what are we able to do in Fairfield County to address our stakeholders, which is you, which is the people we serve, which are the people that are in the grocery store when something happens and they're like, oh my gosh, the people we need to educate, the people we need to say, we're all in this community together. That's what that data drives and tells us, not just, oh, we checked off a compliance box. It's more than that. And I invite you to be watching your email for invitation to the stakeholders review and the upcoming things to come for all that good data that's going to come from across the state and from Fairfield County. And we want to look at those things. I want to take those MUIs. Lorelai and I want you to take seriously what's on that chart and what as a community do we need to do as a whole to make prevention for those categories of MUI. Not necessarily maybe this person or that person, but in general, what is happening that those are continuing and how can we be better as a community to support that? So thank you for sharing best practices. Thank you for thinking about it, that it is sometimes systems that, that we have a starting point, that we need to be realistic. And checking compliance boxes don't make good providers. And I agree. if we remember why we are here, then we will be much smoother in the process. And so I did put a few things in here that I just want to make sure to think about. Use the DODD website to your advantage. There are at a glance for agency providers, which just remind you of the things that you're required to do, because we do have that piece that has to be done. Whether you're an agency provider, whether you're an independent provider, you can subscribe to lots of things that can build and give you better resources that you can use to say these. You don't have to create everything yourself and feel like you're at the, the drawing board every other day. There are tools out there. There are ways to help educate your team. Don't be afraid to have that voice. There are forms, there are the health and welfare toolkit, and then there's the 5 whys, the part that we talked about, where in the end, if we keep asking ourselves why, and we ask it enough times, and we really get to the root of why we're here, if we get to the root of why the person needs a response to a situation, if we get to the root of why someone is having anxiety about something, why they don't like something, why they don't want to go to programming, why they don't want to do things. If we continue to do that, then everything will grow and everything will be a better outcome for a safer, happy, and best life. Because that's what we want. Vibrant community. So, all right, what about questions? I know we did a little bit just in general about some best practices sharing, but we have just a little bit of time, I think, maybe not much. Somebody tell me. I have sirens going off in my ears.
Jen, could you just touch briefly about the meeting coming up later this month, the stakeholders that you do annually?
Yes, and so it'll be in March. Sorry, I'm trying to stop sharing my screen. I can't walk and chew gum. So I need some assistance with those processes in my own world. So the stakeholders meeting is always held in March. Last year they pushed it to April, but I think we're back on target for March this year. I don't think they're doing that. When everybody's annual reports are due by February 28th. So TikTok, we got 5 days. And those are all due in for individual providers, agency providers, those parts. And we'll be taking that data and then sending out a review 2 weeks prior to. So typically we do it at the very end of March. So that invitation will be coming out very soon. I just need to talk and make sure that we've got how we're going to do it. If it's going to be in person, if we're going to be virtual. I think moving forward, my philosophy of things is to have those options so that we have voice, choice, and control so that we can be involved and always having those things. So I'll have to get some guidance on whether that's and how that's going to take place, but you'll be getting that invitation. So how many people feel that they would like to have a specific UI investigation training so that they feel more comfortable with that part of things? Okay. So that's something that I want to offer this year. It's going to happen this year. And, it'll be something that will be specific to people who have that as part of their duties and requirements. Agencies have that, but someone has that piece of it. I also would like to be able to maybe honor some roundtable discussions that might be smaller groups that are about specific things that maybe you're just struggling with a little bit more in a specific response to cause and contributing factors or prevention planning, or how does it all fit together, or how do you verify it? That's the thing that is, recently I was on a call with the state And they'd come in to do, continued follow-up to the Medicaid review. I think some of you all know that they came in and looked at Ohio as one of the people that had best practices of things. They came back to do another review, and something that we were falling short with, they felt, from Medicaid's standpoint, was verification. And often we have folks say, well, it's not in the rule. I don't have to do daily logs. I don't have to, there's no prescribed specific thing. And so that's the part that I want you to think about, that's that scaffolding, and you get to decide how to do that part for your team, for your agency, for that individual. But in the end, if you just think about the fact that you have to show your billing, you have to show where you travel to, you have to show your outcomes, you have to show that you're following up with those next steps of things. So the documentation's already there. It's not adding something new. It's not creating something that, is this extra step that we're going to have to do. It's showing that it's been completed. And that's why oftentimes they will ask about, something happens and we say, well, can we have the last month of UIs? Because it's something that's been happening. That's why those are important. Somebody fell and they'd been to the doctor, for something a week before. Those things are going to get asked. What did the doctor say then? Did they have another appointment scheduled? Are we doing these? Those are those pieces of things that you can become creative with, do those best practices of things, talk with each other about how to do that. So I think that that's where we want to lead this year, is making time for those things that help you not be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and help each other support through this process, and that we just have better outcomes of safety.
Jen, I want to address, there's a couple of things in the chat box.
Sure.
About specific MUI training for agencies or providers. And obviously Jen and I would be more than happy to still schedule that with you. Just get a hold of one of us and we'll see what works out best for your schedule. Whether you're an independent provider or whether you're an agency provider, we can work that out, come to you, however works best for you.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of, we're kind of just got this one little piece that we keep seeing as a kink, and we need to move forward with that. So yeah, we always want to be here. We're here to support you. We're here to help this process, grow and be the best it can be for our entire community. So is everybody excited that we just didn't go over the MUI definitions this time? And how we circled back that if we start with the incident report, that we, have those answers. So anyway, I thought that would be just a better, get you thinking about things and focusing on how the story's told visually that kicks off the investigation can really help things in a long way.
And there are some examples on the DODD website of completed incident reports for, let's just say, whichever scenario. The one that I came across going to be significant injury, but it does, if you look at those examples, it does show you exactly what Jen was talking about earlier, about making sure that you write out the full incident in detail, putting the rest of it on another sheet of paper if you need to. And then it also has really good examples filled in for cause and contributing factors and what that looks like when you fill that in, and the prevention plan and things like that. So those are really great examples that DODD has on their website.
Yep, and hopefully that will be the deeper dive we will take with some of that UI investigation training. And we also doing a little bit more focus on writing a good incident report, because the firsthand of you hiring people, training people, reviewing those incidents and seeing that something's missing or somebody did a great incident report, how to highlight and use that to do that is the goal. So our time's up.
Thanks, Jen and Lorelei and Pam for all the information that you shared with providers today. Just a couple things before we end. Just a reminder that our next provider meeting will be March 23rd, and I will send out the agenda closer to that meeting. Also, all the information that was shared today will be added to the Excellence Network. Once you get on that website, just scroll down and you'll see provider resources. When you click on that, on the left side of the page, it'll say past provider meetings. Once you click on that, it'll just give the year and the month of the meetings, and you can pull all this information plus today's recording. Just a reminder that the members of the Excellence Network will be meeting after this one ends, so please stay on. Again, if you want to know more information about the Excellence Network, please reach out to me, and I can either meet with you or send you information regarding the Excellence Network. To the provider with the phone number of 614-648-1005. I apologize when Ann had asked your name earlier. I did not get it written down. So do you mind spelling your first and last name so that we can get that certificate for today's training to you? So other than that, everybody have a great rest of your day and your week. And it was good seeing all of you and all the new faces. And we hope to see you all next month.
Are we taking a 5-minute?
Yes, absolutely. Please take a little break. I know this has been a long and exciting 2 hours, but everybody take a little break and we'll come back in about 5 minutes. Hoping to get the name of the 614 phone number that joined us today. If you can spell your first and last name for me, I want to make sure that Ann gets your certificate to you.